Hi there. Well, we got three of us so far. Not quite a quorum yet, but we'll hope we get a couple. I thought we would have Connor. I know, Jude, you said you'd be off camera, and so you are, so that's okay. Oh, Jude's connecting to the audio. Um, yeah, so Connor did say he would be here. I didn't really hear from Jeff. I'm going to go on mute for a moment and call some people.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system. 84590123991 is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options. To leave a callback number, press 5.
Hey there, Jeff. This is Laura. I didn't know if you were able to join the zoning revision committee meeting. We almost have a quorum. One more will give us a quorum. We're expecting Connor, but he's in Mexico, so we're hopeful that you or Connor can join so we have a quorum. Anyway, I sent an email out with a link, but it's on the town calendar. If you click on the today or meeting, you'll get the link to the Zoom. Hope we see you. Thanks. Bye. Okay. Okay, so I just left a voicemail for Jeff, and I also just texted Connor because Connor's in Mexico and we're hoping we have Connor. And I'm gonna grab a little bit of water. I'm coming back in. Oh, yay. Okay, we have Connor joining. Okay, so Connor's connecting to audio. Oh, and we have, oh dear. Yeah, Connor, that's interesting because you just showed up. Oh, I don't know if you can hear me, Connor. You're on mute. But yeah, you said you've been in the waiting room.
Hello, hear me?
I can, yeah. I know you said your text says you've been in the lobby for 10 minutes, but you didn't show up until just now.
Well, at this point, 13, but who's counting? It's fine. Let's do it.
Well, yeah, but I'm telling you, I've been admitting people for the last 8 minutes, 5 minutes at least, and you weren't on the list. I would have, anyway. But now you're here. So you're here. We have Ed, we have Jude, we have me. So we have a quorum, and we have Heather Cross. So let me just write down. We have Ed, Jude, Connor, and our guest is Heather. Righty. So where we are, and as we all know, I'm a screen sharer. So let me go pull up my agenda. I sent everybody a quick agenda, and I will go share my screen so we can all see it. Oh, we have all kinds of people all of a sudden. I'm admitting. Let me just write down. Lisa and Sarah. Okay. 212. Righty. So I'm sharing my screen. So what we wanted to do today was, well, we can adopt the agenda, but here it is. I was going to let people know a few things, and I had a question for the ZRC, for the Housing Oversight Task Force, where we are right now, and I'll stop sharing for a moment. With the Housing Oversight Task Force, I know that people have strong issues. I know people in the Zoning Revision Committee have strong issues about the Housing Oversight Task Force proposed law. The proposed law is in two pieces. It's Chapter 202, which has to do with subdivisions, which focuses, in my opinion, very heavily on the environment and protecting the environment. And then we have Chapter 260, which is the zoning, which attempts to provide more types of housing, allowing more just more types of housing so we can get more housing in town. And so 260, when I hear people complain, I think they're complaining about 260. So I was just hoping between Connor and Jude and Ed and anybody else, our guests, is 202 an issue? Because it occurred to me that one idea might be to split the housing proposal, the Housing Oversight Task Force proposal, and let's look at the subdivision, which as I see it is environmentally protective, and see whether people agree that can move forward and worry about the rest of it later, and instead of trying to look at it in one big group. It just seemed maybe breaking it up. So I didn't know, Jude and Ed and Connor, do you have issues with section 202, which is the subdivision part? I know you have issues with 260, which is the zoning part. Do you have issues, and if so, how strong are your concerns with the subdivision part?
All right, so we're looking at this, just to be clear, we're talking about in terms of the Housing Oversight Task Force, the Affordable Housing Initiative, not in relation to STRs.
Correct. I just wanted to ask a quick question before we dive into STRs. And yes, you're right, totally right. This is not STR.
I don't know that I'm definitely reticent to say that we would just push through or move forward too quickly with anything. If we're looking, subdividing land, while the focus of 202, may be leaning environmental in nature, if it is going to be the sort of focal point of how we think about subdivision and not that doesn't occur in 260, then when it comes time for us to look into this and do our part, I feel like we should be willing to get, if not to be more as detailed, because if we want to be in our track as the zoning revision committee, that's really 260. However, I don't think we should shy away from giving our opinions on, say, the effect that allowing or disallowing, again, without putting my thumb on the scale either way, how those subdivisions could affect our ability to provide more housing and under what conditions?
Well, the main thing, I think that one of the biggest features of the subdivision of chapter 2, and your point is an excellent point, that you're right. We're the zoning revision committee, and chapter 202 by definition is not zoning because it's not chapter 260. But so that is a really good point. But the main thing I see with the subdivision chapter is conservation subdivision. So for example, if you have an 80-acre lot and you're in the R8 district, you would have to cut it into, if you want to get maximum lots, you would cut 10 equal size 8-acre lots. But with the new subdivision law, it says, well, you can have an option of, instead of cutting and every lot being eight acres, and you could maybe preserve half of that property, nobody could ever touch it at all, and then you're allowed 4-acre lots because you took half of it and you preserved it forever, and now you still get your 8 lots, but they're all 4 acres, but they're clustered together more, so you have larger areas of space that are untouched, and that's better for the environment. So that's what the subdivision law does, and I'd have to look and say, well, what else does it do? But a lot of what it does is environmental, and it wouldn't really change what somebody could or couldn't do in the zoning. If we chose to move forward with the zoning law, the current zoning law, I think, would still work if we did those subdivision changes, but we would have the option of doing other stuff. And my opinion of the zoning law is we're getting so much feedback. We need to really give it thought. I'm not in a hurry to push chapter 260 changes through because we need the housing stuff anyway. We need to give it more thought. We want to listen to the people, and we haven't finished listening to the people yet. So that's kind of my thought. But I think the people are mostly concerned about 260. I just didn't know what anybody thinks if people.
I'd certainly like to hear more from the rest of the board. I don't want to, dismiss us looking at anything just because it's not in our direct purview, but I want to hear the rest of the board. And just a quick aside, I'm getting texts that some people are waiting to get in.
Well, and you know what? They're supposed to be showing up, and thank you for that. And I can share. Well, I already did share my screen. They're not. I mean, same as you. You were in the waiting room for 13 minutes, and I didn't see you. I'm the host, and other people are not showing up. I get a link, and if I go to participants, I get something that tells me to add people, and I'm not getting that. So I don't have a good answer. It's a technical difficulty, but I can't add them if I don't see them.
Well, thank you. I'll take a look.
Oh yeah, Linda Lever. Oh, sorry. Oh, come on. I'm trying to, and now my phone isn't letting me.
Can I go ahead and weigh in?
Yes, please.
On the subdivision regs. I think we could look at them. I think there are fewer issues with them, but there are still issues. You know that we do have a clustering provision in the law now and in the subdivision regs. It's just not mandated. So that's a question if it's going to be mandated. It comes with the subdivision. Are they required to cluster, or do they have the option? Because right now they still have the option, and I think Peter Cross told me the only ones that ever took advantage of that was, I think it's called, is it called Woodstock?
Yeah. Hang on, I'm going to get this because it might be somebody trying.
Well, it looks like Linda is in now, if that is part of this issue.
Yeah, hang on a sec.
Well, this is Chris Bailey. I want to get in too.
Well, I know, Chris, but all I can say is Connor said he waited for 13 minutes and then I saw him, I could let him in. I can't let you in until I see you on the screen, but hang in there. Stay hooking in, and it seems like eventually you get hooked in. Because Linda's on, Linda Lover was on for a long time. And Linda, I just saw you to add you. There's a technical difficulty. It's just people's names are coming up slowly.
Okay, well, also it said on the Zoom
Well,
link in the town, it said 6 a.m., not 6 p.m. So I'm wondering if that's the same link. Now it says the right link, but earlier it was the wrong. I don't.
I don't know. Okay, I just start the meeting.
I'd say let's keep it moving, because I
But
mean,
yeah, hang on, Connor, 1 second. I need to finish up. I would say, okay, so I am going to have to hang up, and I apologize that you can't get in. It is recorded, but I believe that you will get in because everybody else who tried to get in eventually hooked in. And as soon as I see you,
I don't get in. I don't agree with anything that's done in this meeting.
well, that's okay. We'll be catching up. And what was your name again?
Chris Bailey.
Chris Bailey. Okay, Chris Bailey. All right. All right. Well,
I'm calling from the bloody Bahamas.
oh, well, you know, that could be a problem because one of the members called from Mexico. So anyway, I got to go because yeah, I know, but anyway, I got to go. I got 9 people who were just watching me talk on the phone, and I got to get back to the meeting. But hang in there because I believe eventually you'll pop up on the screen. So
This meeting is bogus.
well, thank you. Okay, I got to go. Bye-bye. Okay, so my apologies. So we were at Jude, and Jude was saying that we should really, if we're going to consider the subdivision law, we're not going to make a snap decision. We're going to really look at it. So Ed, was there anything that you wanted? Oh, go ahead, Jude.
Well, I think we should, and I also think Ken Panza has really looked into the subdivision laws and had a lot of comments. So, you know, I certainly don't think it's as extensive as zoning, but I do think there are things to look at. You know, for example, I'll just throw one out there, you know, whether a golf course or a sewage treatment plant can be counted as part of the open space requirement.
Oh, right, exactly. Yes,
So
exactly.
like that. So I would be, you know, I think we could take a look at it, but I don't think it's going to be a non-look.
Right. Okay. And that's very good points. Ed, is there anything that you wanted to add about whether or not we want to be looking at the subdivision law?
Yes, I've paid attention to Ken Panza's comments on the subdivision regulations, and I am in general agreement with him. I think there are very serious problems with the subdivision regulations,
Okay.
just as I believe in massive problems with the zoning provisions.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So we'll have to figure out where on the list that goes because we're doing STRs now, as we know. But thank you for the input. So, and that tells me that it'll be something significant for us to work on. It won't be just a quickie vote. We want to really look at it and give it some thought. So I appreciate that. So anyway, so we'll move on to let me go back to the agenda. Let me share my screen.
were we ready to sort of, did we need to take any votes or anything on the updated language for the scenic overlay? Because you know, I just for the record, I mean, while they seem, you know, pretty uncontentious, this has taken a lot longer than it seems like it needed to for such
distractions. So my apologies for any distractions that made it that had to take the time it did. So I'll apologize for distractions. But now that
wait, Laura, but before you go on, and I'm sorry, but
Sure.
just like, again, it's not just on you, it's not just on any one person. And I would encourage you, if this gets dragged out any further, to take some sort of in-kind vote on the town board to say, we approve this pending these changes, sort of the way, you know, the House might approve something and send it to the Senate. So
yeah.
So I mean, and really, just to give some perspective on this, I'm going to repeat myself. A year later, we are entering building season.
You're correct, and we should be able to get this going. We have a meeting tomorrow. We have a meeting tomorrow night. We have a meeting a week from tomorrow, so we should be able to get this going before this building season because it's all done except for that language, and the language now is in there in a draft. So
I appreciate that. Thank you, and I would just just for the sake of being direct and putting it all out there, please, for us, for the board, for the trees, put some fire under the board. That I
Yep.
will ask.
I think that the board, well, it's kind of funny because, as you know, we have one new board member, but I don't expect an issue. And I believe that the other board members were all in agreement with it. So I believe we're pretty good with it, but yes.
And that's what they did. They had the wrong link in.
Yep.
They probably did it on purpose.
Linda, we can hear-
Linda, you're not on mute, but anyway, that's
sorry.
okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all a conspiracy. Well, I'm glad you got in, because I don't know if you didn't have the right link, how you got in, but you eventually got in.
Yeah, well, I think the wrong link was put on the website because I copied it, and then I went there just now and it was a different link, a different passcode, so I don't know.
I don't have but I know there's 3 meetings on that date, so who knows? But anyway, so that being said, anybody else want to talk about scenic overlay? Anybody else on the ZRC want to talk about? Go ahead, Ed.
Connor, have you read carefully this changes that the supervisor wants in the text?
I went over the changes before, and I can pull it up again right now.
But I'm relying on your opinion. You think it doesn't weaken the law in any way?
I did not see it's really a couple changes in words. One of them was like he wanted to change in addition the word.
No. What I did, no, let me explain. And I'm sorry for cutting you off, but let me explain. So Bill gave me a paragraph to put in there. I inserted it in the way I thought it would fit, because he gave me a paragraph from a different law, but it referenced some stuff that our law didn't have. So that's why I tweaked it. So what I put in there was my tweaks of it. But the difference, if you look at the law, if you pull up the file that has the law and look at the red, because I use markup language, the difference is the law, the way we proposed it, said it was the building inspector's discretion, the building inspector's discretion of how much of a fee to charge or how much of a fine to charge. And Bill said that's not proper. It really needs to be, you go to the court sets the fee. The building inspector will take the case to the court, but the language that said the building inspector sets the fee, and it could be up to $5,000, and it's up to the building inspector's discretion. That was what really needed to change. So if you're looking at my email that said what got tweaked, I'm just saying, what did I tweak from the paragraph Bill gave me? But if you want to see how it looks in the law, you would open the attached file and look at the red, and it's on pages 5 and 6.
So there's no longer any $5,000 penalty.
It's up to $5,000, but the difference is the court sets it, not the building inspector.
Okay, thank you. But the $5,000 is still in there.
Up to 5,000, the exact same wording we had.
Okay.
And that's what I was going to say. The only thing that really materially changes was a couple words from passing the enforcement away, not the enforcement, I'm sorry, the essentially assigning of fees away from the building inspector, which that I think kind of does make sense.
All right.
I'm concerned because I feel like I look at other laws just in terms of, sorry, I've got background here, STRs, and people set very specific fines. And I'm just thinking, we need to have a specific fine. I wouldn't leave it up to the court, because just because I think it tends to be more lenient, and that's sort of defeats the purpose of what we were trying to do with this, which is impress upon people that they really need to follow this law. If it's, if it ends up being a $50 fine, then it's not going to have much teeth. And I have a question about that. I mean, leaving it up to the court, I think it should be a set amount.
Well, the issue, Jude, with that is, I hear people say all the time, oh, all those wealthy people up on the mountain, they can afford it. Some people, you're going to bankrupt them with the first $5,000. Some people you might bankrupt with the first day's worth of $5,000. Other people, they could pay $500,000 and you won't bankrupt them. So I think the reason for the sliding scale was to be able to have some say of the goal is to have it be a penalty that wakes people up, but the goal is not to bankrupt everybody unnecessarily. So that's kind of, I think, the reason why I believe that the up to 5,000, if you want to throw the book at them and you think that's the right thing, you can. But if there are other circumstances and you believe they're going to correct the problem, but maybe they missed 2 days, right? It's $5,000 a day. Maybe they were 2 days late, but they were trying. You have the option to give them a chance without really smacking them if they're trying to, if they're really trying to fix the problem. So I personally,
Dude, could I? Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
There may be a slight delay on my line. I just to address what you're saying, Jude, and I'm sort of playing devil's advocate here, but I would suggest that with the court in Woodstock being a elected position, that this is the kind of thing that if a court or a judge or the judge is going to be serially lenient, that there is then a measure of accountability baked into the fact that they can be run out of office.
Yeah. So, well, in any event, Jude, and what I will say is it will be the board's decision, right? I appreciate everybody's input, but this law, when things go through committee and then there's a point at which they're with the board, and this law really is with the board, but I did want to share with everybody how it got altered, and I appreciate everybody's input. But I do suspect the board will go with, because Bill asked, first of all, it needed to get moved from the building inspector, which I agree with, so that it's really the court rather than one person. Anyways, and it is with the board at this point in time, but I appreciate what you're saying, however.
Well, just because I don't fully like that either, I want to make sure that we get to at least air our concerns as a board, and as a committee,
Sure.
rather, and to say that if we are truly, concerned about a lack of enforcement or a lack of accountability for, this particular point, that it at least is something that we express as a committee beforehand, because we have put a lot of work into this. We've put
absolutely
a lot of time. And while it may be with the board currently, if it did materially change things, which ultimately I don't think it does, because and again, Jude, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, in addition to the idea that this is an elected position and that is how we hold people like that accountable in a democracy. I would also say that, if the building inspector, or the ZEO, is handing out fines, some of them are going to wind up in court. They're going to go in that direction if people choose to pursue that. And so it seems like the last stop anyway to me. And at least in this measure, we have given the court what we feel is a wider and more appropriate berth to act on. And if they choose not to, say what you want about the misanthropic sort of, scattering of priorities around Woodstock, but we all do really care about the environment. And I feel like that is, in terms of voting someone in who could easily run on a platform of, I will hold people accountable for these environmental infractions. I wonder what you think of that.
And Jude, you're on mute if you have.
No, I wasn't saying anything. I think that this has been an ongoing discussion between the town and the courts, and how seriously they take zoning infractions. And I think, my understanding is the conversation has been, the judges have said every case is individual and they didn't want to discuss it. But my impression, from past, I don't know currently what's going on, but from a few conversations I've had, is that it's not high on the list. But that's, it is what it is, I guess. And I think that the notion that somebody will get voted out of office over this is maybe a little idealistic, I guess. Something we care about, but I'm not sure that everyone does. And I'm thinking about my past experiences when we first moved here, and and I know it's better than it was back then, but part of because they're elected, you know, part of it is they don't want you to get mad at them when you go to court. So anyways, you know, I don't know what the answer is. Maybe there should be a minimum and a maximum. Maybe that would solve that problem, you know, because of the minimum, you know, could be $50 in someone else's eyes, and maybe for us it's something else. I don't know. I just didn't want to see things get diluted because I think it's important. So that's my 2 cents, and you guys will figure it out.
So the way we, and I know people, I think people probably join this meeting thinking we're talking about STRs, and we are gonna, but let me just, oh, good, we have somebody else here. We have CJW, and is that, oh, well, I don't know if that's Chris Bailey or not. Anyway, so this is what, and let me get rid of this thing here. So this is what we say about the fines. So we are saying, punished by a fine up to $5,000 per day, beginning 2 weeks after notification of the property owner via certified mail, or any 2-week period during remediation where the plan or implementation is not progressing according to plan, and contact with the applicant with the applicant ceases. So if the applicant is no longer talking to you and they're not moving their plan forward, then you're going to get your up to $5,000 a day. So it's an interesting question. I'm okay with us proposing what the range should be. Maybe we say from 500 to 5,000, maybe from 1,000 to 5,000 a day. 50 is a little low. So, Jude, if we were to put a range, what would you feel comfortable with?
I'd be interested what what other people have to say, but I would feel more comfortable with a range if that's possible. Just Connor,
I mean, for me, it's not really an issue of the range. I mean, if, again, to me, it's incumbent upon, you know, and I don't want to beat this because I understand what you're saying about the idealism, but I also, and maybe it is idyllic for me to feel this way, but I do feel it is incumbent upon not just us, but, you know, the people of this town to engage in and vote accordingly to what, you know, what they feel strongly about. And my only concern is with setting a range is, you know, if, I guess here's what I would say is, rather than say $50 or $100, the minimum should be no less than the processing cost of dealing with this issue. To say that, you know, if it's going to cost us X man hours as a town to even address this issue, that is the bottom line. And the court would have to justify not having anything, or just saying, you know, oh yeah, no problem. You know, I mean, the intent is written in here, and I feel like the language does not support the leniency that we have seen in the past, that I believe was supported by the language of the past, that we're trying to move away from. So it's kind of one of those things. I remember we had Alex Balto in the WEC here in one point, and we started kind of getting into the weeds about, well, what if, and well, what if comes to pass, then maybe we'll reconvene in less than 35 years and readjust things. But what I do think what we've done here is prescriptive and much more effective in an up-to-date way that should empower any judge to hold people accountable. Because, to be honest, I would think a judge wanting to be reelected would be less concerned with what the defendants think of them and more concerned with what the public thinks of them.
Yeah, so, okay. So we didn't actually make any change to the wording that we're seeing here right now. I hear what you're saying, Connor, that the court ought to make sure that the total fee is enough to cover all the processing costs. I don't know how we'd figure that out. But Ed, did you have something to say?
Well, I agree with Connor, but you don't want to make a law so wordy that it can't be understood. And
Right.
$5,000 is still a significant amount of money. And the threat of $5,000 will cause many property owners to adhere to the law. And upper and lower, I mean, that's obfuscating the 5K. The 5K to me is the big cudgel to protect these sacred lands.
Okay, well said. So, all right, so I'm gonna move on because we have other stuff to do here. So where we are, and let me go find the agenda. Okay, so really the next thing we're doing is the STR. I hope everybody who was trying to get on is on at this point. I did add 2 more people. And of course, our next meeting, we're back on our schedule of second and fourth Monday because holidays are over with, so we're good for that for a while. So in case I forget to mention it, we are going to meet in 2 weeks, 6:30 on Zoom. And I'm not quite sure what to do. I'll try to make myself a note to ask Melanie what happened with the Zoom. Ask Melanie, why did the change? Melanie, Zoom issues. Issue for attendees. Yeah, and Connor, I'm not sure why it was after 13 minutes, poof, and you were in, because you didn't come out and go back in. Like Linda went out and went back in and found that there was actually a new link on the website, and you just hang out there for 13 minutes and poof, in you came. So I don't understand that, but that's okay.
I'm not too worried about it.
So, okay. So what I will do, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and try to find the email, and then I'll share again. There we go, and I just sent it. Oh, it's a little slow. Okay.
I used the original link that was on the website,
Uh-huh.
and it was just fine by me. I was
Okay.
actually early for the meeting, just so you know,
Uh-huh.
and I waited. So that was actually just fine. But then I was sent a new link. That's why I left the
Oh,
meeting and went back in, and I had trouble getting back in. But it was
okay.
all the same information. So just an interesting thing to know. Also,
Okay.
I was told the ZRC sets up its own. Maybe that's not true, but I was told the ZRC sets it up its own Zoom.
No, we are always on
Maybe
Zoom.
I'm incorrect.
Yeah, we're
Right.
always on Zoom, but we use the town Zoom. So anyway, I've got to swing it back. And
Okay,
this is
sure.
just so we have all kinds of guests here. This is the zoning
Mhm.
revision committee meeting, and when we set our ground rules at the start of our zoning revision committee convening, the ground rule is the committee does business. Other people can chime in as long as it doesn't derail the forward motion. But really, we got to get some forward motion. So we're going to go to the STR topic, and so I appreciate. But we can't digress too much because we will lose our forward motion. So, so I need to click up the right. I need to get the right email. Okay, now I can. So where we left off, I'm going to share my screen again. Where we left off from a previous meeting is we have a lot of, we were covering a lot of ground, and and I'm going to shrink this thing. There we go. So, and I'm going to do a forward because that way I can save whatever we do. There we go. All right. We were going through an email last time that Jude sent, which had a lot of really cool topics on it. And we're going down through the topics, and the blue is the answers as we talked about each question. So, and I sent this to everybody on the ZRC, so everybody on the ZRC has this, of what do we think were the right answers to certain things. And I think we might have Jeff joining. So anyway, I guess we'll just pick up. I don't know whether anybody of the ZRC feels like we need to rehash because Ed was not here. Do we want to quickly go through the answers so far, or do we just want to start up with the ones that we didn't talk about yet.
I think we should keep moving. I think let's get through as much as we can and then start to review and synthesize.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll leave it down a little bit so people can read some answers. So the next question that we had was amortize current STRs. And Jude, when you say that, what are you thinking?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Okay, I don't know if you're able to see the screen, hopefully. So
Yeah.
we're on your list that you had sent a couple of weeks ago, and we're down to number 4, amortize current STRs. I'm not quite sure what that means.
Oh, okay. And I think I sent you a zoning law where somebody had done that. So what that would mean is if we are talking about trying to reduce the number of current STRs, that you give people a period of time. Isn't that what that means? Like amortize means you pay down your mortgage, right? Isn't that what that generally means? So what that would mean is over a period of time.
Are you talking kind of like sunsetting?
Right. But I think that there was, I sent out something today, and forgive me, I have to go grab it, of a zoning law where they did that.
Well, you sent three zoning laws, I think it was today. I didn't get a chance to look at the 3 of them, but I think you sent 3.
And one of them did this in their law.
So the goal of amortizing is you want to bring down the total number of STRs, and the idea is that you got this many this year, but you have a plan, a schedule. You got 100 this year, but you want to take out 5 every year. So next year you got 95, and next year 90. Is that what amortizes?
Well, interesting. I don't know how we would go about doing this, honestly. Or is it just that you give people a period of time to, like, you don't say, okay, tomorrow you don't have your STR anymore. You'll say you have 2 more years of it, and then it's gonna, I don't know how the mechanism would work to make that happen. But unless we're gonna continue having 500 STRs, there has to be some way to pare them down.
Well, what is the goal? Is the goal we have too many STRs and we're trying to get to a smaller number? Is that the goal?
That's a good question. I thought that we had discussed that.
Well,
that's one of the issues that we've tackled. To me, this seems more a question of what do we do about the number we have currently. Amortizing would be assuming that if we were to reduce the number, how do we select who sunsets first, and what does that involve? I mean, yeah. I think the only way we can answer that question is by coming up with after we come up with the mechanism by which we select new candidates, and if there is a type of lottery that comes out, then it, to me, I don't think at a glance anyone would need special treatment for having one already. And again, this is assuming, I'm not suggesting, but if we assume that there was a lottery or something like that, then once that lottery takes effect, I don't think it would be unreasonable to say existing STRs have, let's say, a 1-year period where they can continue to exist for the first year as we ramp up this lottery system. And then as they fall out, the lottery takes their place. Is that a kind of an example of how we might do this? Again, I'm not proposing that. I am just using it as an example to sort of materialize this idea.
So I think that's what Grand Island did, is they had a 1-year period. And that's what they called it. So I just.
And do you feel like this is kind of at least the spirit of what you're trying to address, so that we could, come back to this as we gain focus in other areas and hone our idea of what this means in practice, I mean?
Well, I want to jump in a little bit. So one of the things that we said was no lottery. And the other thing, just as a reminder, when we talked before, we did talk about to figure out how many how many STRs we should have, we talked about 4 different types. We talked about if the owner is not on premise and there's a single dwelling unit on the property and the entire dwelling unit is rented as the STR for more than 30 days a year, non-owner occupied, that's one type, and that's where we want to probably have the lowest number. If the owner's not on premise, but they were renting for less than 30 days, so you got the owner not on premise. You're either renting out more than 30 days in a year, or you're renting out for fewer than 30 days in a year. And we might have different target numbers for those, because we're worried less about the less than 30 days a year. That's maybe the person who snowbirds and they want to rent out when they're not in it. And they're not going to be in it those days anyway. So what the heck, let them rent it. So, but if somebody wants to rent it more than 30 days a year, that's a business. Somebody maybe, just came in. Okay.
Well, I do remember that, but these are, I guess what we're talking about though, then is to zero in, because the only type in that case that we would be amortizing are the kinds that are perpetual,
The kind that we want to get fewer of, because some of these, like if the owner's on premise and they're always in the same dwelling, we may not even have a limit for that. So we didn't actually set limits. We did talk about the 4 different types, or if the owner's on premise and not in the same dwelling. So they're renting out a whole thing. They're on premise, but they're not in the same dwelling. So these are the 4 types we talked about. We did say before that we didn't want a lottery. And now your example of this thing was having a lottery. But in any event,
we can walk away from that. Just trying to be straight.
Can I just jump in? I think what Connor's talking about, we had said we didn't want a yearly lottery, or we said people would just go back to the bottom of the list. I think Connor's talking about, how do you initially decide if there's whatever number of permits, what percentage we allow? How do you make that initial decision? And maybe that's where the lottery comes in. And then after that, it's you go back, once you've had your chance, you go back to the bottom of the list. I just want to throw in there, I called Bartek from Kingston to ask him some questions about their law. If you want me to talk about that now, or you want me to save that for another time?
Oh, well, let me get this note in here and then you can talk about it now if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, hang on just a sec.
But who, could I ask something?
Yes. Go ahead, Ed.
Who's going to decide the upper limit of STRs in the town of Woodstock? Is this going to be the board, or is this going to be, our committee will recommend a number and the board will decide? Secondly, refresh my memory. How many short-term rentals are there now in the town of Woodstock? 400
okay. Let me
486.
Yeah.
Something.
So there's not 486 legal ones though, are there, Connor? Did you say 486?
I think there are 4. It's 4. I believe, and either way, it's 6 in one, half a dozen in the other. We are upwards of. We are just below 500, including, importantly, known illegal STRs.
Yeah.
And again, that makes up close to 10% of our housing stock.
Right. Yeah. So okay.
And so, is there some guide as to the number of STRs that we want the town to go down to?
Well, I think that we want to go back to this 4 different choices of the 4 different types that we talked about, because our number, I believe, will be different for the different types. So the number that we're going to allow, if somebody is going to be renting out an entire unit more than 30 days a year, then we're talking about a business. They just bought this thing up and there's going to be a revolving door, and they're doing commodity, not community, making Woodstock. So that would be bad. I'm thinking if we had owner on premise and they're always in the same dwelling, they're just renting out a room, but they're always there, we might not want to have a limit at all. So I think that like the 1% might be for these owner not on premise, but we didn't decide yet. But get back to your other question. I think it would be beneficial for the town board if the ZRC recommended what the ZRC thinks, as opposed to just saying, hey, board, what do you think? I think that because, we got some advice from Kai when he came, Kai from the county. We've got some, Connor's sharing some numbers. I know Jude's done a lot of research. So I think that we have we can we have done some education of ourselves that we can help the town board by making recommendations.
But just to repeat what Laura said in the middle of that, the number that has been thrown around by multiple of the at least expert leaning presenters that we've had here has been 1% of your housing stock is more the standard and more the healthy amount. And the other number that we were keeping in the back of our sort of heads through all of this was the healthy number for a town of 5% vacancy rate to allow for turnover of people in between housing. I think of what we're doing and everything we've kind of added up to here as, again, a very malleable work in progress that we're going to come and sort of keep shaping as we go. We're putting the clay on the potter's wheel right now, essentially. But those are the two numbers that I am keeping sort of close to at hand.
Well, how many units are there in Woodstock then?
There, in terms of total,
yes,
yeah, it's about 4,000 ish.
A little
So-
over. Kai gave us numbers.
So 1% of that?
1% of that.
Yeah. So my question is 1%, do you think, Connor, if we look at these four things, 1, 2, 3, 4, is the 1%, 1 and 2 combined would be 1%? Or is the 1% only one? Like you only get,
Well,
only
if
get 40.
If I can just be, I don't mean to deflect or anything like that. I think it's really about, for me, houses that are not on the market. If the house is neither occupied regularly or available to rent long term, then it is off the market, and that is how we should think about that 1%. Part of our goal here is to foster a permissive environment for, say, the other categories we've come up with, where we have people who live in town, where we are looking at a more traditional B&B model and open the opportunity for people who would either require a lesser permit or whatever we come up with for that. So while that's my answer, it's also, I think we should keep moving and then keep doubling back and re-examine as we go and add more clarity to this conversation, because there's so much more to talk about that could affect how we all see this.
Yeah. Well, I kind of feel like, so what I'm going to do though, is I'm going to add a note here. That's just, I'm going to take the number out of here and just say, oh, that's not a good thing. Let me go back. I lost the number. Oh. And all of a sudden yeah, all of a sudden things got funny here, so that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, you'll have to delete that one more time.
Yeah. Well, because I was trying to get rid of this thing, but what I'll do is I'll just make it a bullet, and oh, now they're all bullets.
Man, that, yeah, there you go.
Oh, you know what? Here we go. We have an undo. Pardon me, as I'm just going to undo it.
Just a little tip, Command Z on your keyboard is undo.
Yeah. Oh, yay. I don't know if I remember that, but anyway, I'll try. But for the moment, I'll just say 5 is a note. I'll just say it's a note. So we wanted to say note, just what you had said, goal 1% housing stock as STR. And then if the vacancy rate is a healthy 5%. TH1. I'm just making this red. Yay. Yay. Okay. All right. And you wanted to go on, and we need to decide which category the 1% 5%. Okay. Save draft. All right. So as Connor said, we need to keep going. Okay.
Okay, now can I go back and
Oh,
talk about
yes.
that, because that's about this issue. So I talked to him about how this is going. First of all, I wanted to let you know they're using a different company.
And
to
which town is this? This is town of Kingston?
the city of Kingston.
City of Kingston. Ah, City of Kingston.
We
Okay.
looked at their law, and they went with 1%. That's what they did. And they were using somebody else called GovOS, which they said North Alba used, and they felt like they negotiated a better arrangement, or they found it was more in keeping with what they needed. So that's where I came up with the 30 days or less suggestion, was from Kingston. So I asked him how many people had applied for that particular version. He said it was limited. There were 11 applicants for that. He said that their registration is limited to 100 for the non-owner occupied. The registration is limited to 124. He said at this point, let's see. No, what did he say? I've got looking at my notes. There are 101. It might have been the 106 number, but they haven't. He said they still have room. They still have room for some more applicants. They have in their law that an ADU can never be an STR. And he said that was a decision the Common Council made. So that was something we were kind of going back and forth about last time we talked about this, was
Right.
what does the town want to do about that? And and there was varying opinions. But
well, here's there's our conversation there. ADUs can be STR. When we polled, some people said the first ADU no, first ADU yes, second ADU. Some people said no second ADU at all. Maybe the first can be an STR, and yes on first ADU, but managed with a cap. So we're across the board with our numbers. But the other thing I want to say is I also have the Kingston, the Daily Freeman article, and their number of 1%, I'm pretty sure, and I think you said it, the full-time, because they talk about a full-time short-term rental, and I think that's where they put their 1%. They didn't have the 1% everywhere. And the resident occupied STR, they have no limit on how often a room can be rented, according to Daily Freeman. So you're talking about what you talked to somebody. I'm reading what the Freeman said. So the Freeman said they didn't put any limit onto a resident occupied STR.
They did not. That's correct. And this is the person who runs their housing authority who I spoke to. So he knows what's happening there. I talked to him about, well, how do we, if you decide to do this 30 days or less, and Ed, just to catch you up on it, the idea was maybe you go away on vacation, for a couple of weeks, and you want to rent out your house while you're gone. But that's not a full-time, that's not a business that somebody's running. It's not going to probably impact the neighborhood too much. Because we talked about different things. It's not just, is it going to create more housing, long-term rentals, but also how is it affecting the community overall when a house is no longer a home, right? So I asked about the 30 days, and I said, how are you enforcing that? And he said, basically, someone has to keep track. So in other words, they only have 11, so they probably will be able to manage it by just looking and just keeping an eye on somebody. And he said he felt like if someone received a warning and just said, gee, you've exceeded he thought that people would be compliant because that's what they had asked for. So that was my conversation with him. It was helpful. It was just helpful to see what's going. I mean, it's only been since January, so it's all new there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Very, very cool. Thank you. So so this number 5 kind of matches what we have above, because we've had the 4 different categories: owner not on premise, owner on premise, and the two versions of each. And then here in number 5 said, should STRs require the owner on premise, hosted versus unhosted? So we had said before, hypothetically, we could have these 4 categories, but we didn't say what the limit would be. And maybe the limit is none for some. So we didn't actually say. And the other thing we talked about is, I'm thinking, somebody's a snowbird, they go for maybe 2 months of the year, so they're actually going for 60 days. So how is this 30 days going to work for them? But somebody else pointed out, well, it's going to work because even though they're going for 60 days, they probably have weekenders in, so it's still probably going to be under 30 days. So I wasn't sure that the 30 days was the right number for the snowbirds, but if they're just renting on weekends, it'll probably fit if they're going for say 2 months. But anyway, so
But I think that is something that we should definitely get clarity on. I'm not saying we have to nail it down now, but just clarifying whether or not we mean 2 months, or I'm sorry, 30 days in terms of calendar days, non-sequentially, or if, again, even if for the sake of making it easier to manage, to say for a 30-day period, you may rent that. And those are 2 very different things.
Well, they are, and the way it reads, the way we have it would be, if 30 days would be, if you rent for a full month, you're done, because there go your 30 days. Or you might rent for weekends over 2 months, and you didn't use up all your 30 days yet because you're only renting on the weekends. So,
and I guess I would say that, you know, I could be amenable to saying, you know, you can rent for a total of 30 calendar days within a 2-month period. Because if we say something like that, then it makes it a lot more manageable, registering and, you know, planning around that, and communicating that status to me becomes a lot more manageable than, say, someone being able to rent touch and go any 30 days of the year.
Well, I guess I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if we want to be restricting people. Like here we say, we have another category, owner not on premise incidental, because they're running fewer than 30 days in a year. I mean, does it matter when they do it? Because maybe every 3 months they're going for a week and they want to rent every three months. And I don't know if we need to constrain.
Well, I'm not saying we have to figure it out now, but I definitely think this is something that we should discuss more at some point, because how we keep track of that is important.
Yeah. Okay. So in answer to our own question, which is the bottom of the page, should STRs require owner on premise? So we're saying, we said up top that we envision 4 different categories, which means that we are allowing some owners to not be on premise. So should we answer number 5 saying we don't require it because we have categories that, or we?
I think it's pretty clear that there will be some amount of non-owner occupied STRs. And to echo Jude's suggestion in an email she sent, a great line of conversation to address this sort of, you know, how it affects the community is by saying, you know, how are we going to deal with density on this sort of level? You know, like you know, in terms of how clustered can these homes.
Right. And I saw that email today that kind of you and Jude were passing back and forth about, if there is a lot of density in one area, is there a way to limit, to say, hey, this area is done because you've already got a certain density. Track density. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And
I don't.
Number 6 is one we just did in number 1, so we could probably just kind of skip right over that.
Okay, well, hang on a sec, because I'm and Ed did try to say something. Ed, did you want to say something before we move on?
No, I just say I agree with the possibility of dealing with density of that Jude brought up. That you just stick a sentence or 2 into the law and you can solve that problem.
Okay, so first of all, I'll say, as Connor said, I'll say this is answered above. Answered above the 4 categories. And we'll say that. So I put a note here, Ed. Yeah, if too many in an area limit, you know, track the density if too many in an area limit. So so that's the note to say that we should add something.
Yes.
On that. Okay. So we've covered 6. Explicitly prohibit temporary structures such as tents, etc. glamping, now this is the interesting thing. I think glamping's a whole different animal. And it's not, I'm not recalling if our zoning law covers glamping at this point in time, but that would be a temporary structure. And oh, by the way, an RV would be a temporary structure. If you wanted to drive in an RV and say, hey, you can come stay in my RV and I'm going to rent my RV out, and then you drive off the RV later, that I would think would be a temporary structure. So how do people...
We do have in the law that you can have a camp and you have to meet certain criteria. And I'm assuming when you're talking about having a campground that, you know, those are temporary. But what's happening, or what was happening, you know, things may have quieted down a little bit now, but people were throwing up tents in their backyard, you know, and, you know, RVs, those kinds of things. And I just think it would be good to explicitly prohibit that kind of, you know, no sanitary facilities at all, you know, litter boxes, things like that. We're actually happening.
Okay.
So that's why I threw that in there, you know, and there are different laws that, you know, that talk about those kinds of things. No temporary structures. It has to be a, you know, New York State Building Code approved structure before you start housing people in it.
Fully plumbed.
Right.
Let me get this all in here first before we go forward. So all rentable structures require Board of Health approval, right?
No, I really do think that we do know. I think in order to have tents and people residing in them, you have to meet the criteria for campgrounds that's in the law.
I think we're saying two things though. One of them, you need to follow the campground criteria in the law, but I thought you were saying that you want to explicitly prohibit rental of temporary structures. That would include tents, correct?
Or a short-term rental that doesn't meet the other criteria, right? Because, you know, somebody could have an outhouse and that might meet Board of Health approval. I just think I'm just going by the kinds of things that have been encountered, you know, that people
Sure.
have been throwing up a tent in their backyard, whether, and I just think it would be good to make it clear that that's not allowed.
So
it needs to be an actual structure. And, you know, the campground situation, that is a specific definition in the law with its own requirements. And I don't know that we need to address that in the short-term rental portion of it.
Okay, so if a campground needs to follow the campground law, okay. So I think what I hear you saying, if it's a campground, follow the campground criteria in the law. Otherwise, explicitly prohibit rental of temporary structures, for example, tents. Do you consider an RV a temporary structure or just a tent?
I think an RV is a temporary structure, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Somebody, you know, you know, this goes back to our goals again. You know, what are we looking to do?
Yeah. So is it before we move on, is it a problem to say all rentable structures require Board of Health approval? I mean, because you're right in saying there are some things that have Board of Health approval, but we don't want to allow it. But whatever we do allow for a short-term rental would need to have Board of Health approval. Wouldn't that be a true statement?
I think so.
So, okay. And does anybody, the words that I wrote in red here, if a campground needs to follow campground criteria in the law, otherwise explicitly prohibit rental of temporary structures, example, tents, RVs, all rentable structures require Board of Health approval. Is anybody that on the ZRC that disagrees with those words?
I mean, it just if it's a campground needs to follow campground criteria feels a little redundant, but hey, let's cover our backs, right? I mean, what does everyone else think?
I think it's okay.
Yeah, I think at this point this is all, you know, for discussion for us down the road, right?
Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay. So moving right along, limit on occupancy. Now, there would be an occupancy for bedroom, I would think, because if you say 6 people, I think it might depend. I mean, we're going up to this top list, a limit of occupancy. I think it would be different. I mean, if somebody's in the house, Okay, anyway. So if somebody is in the house, owner on premise, owner is always in the same dwelling of the bedrooms being rented, well, then you'd have, I think, an occupancy limit per bedroom. If the owner is on premise but not in the same dwelling, maybe they have an ADU on their property, or maybe they have a whole house that has several bedrooms. Maybe, so I think it depends on whether a whole building is being rented. So again, just say, what's the number? So we're looking at number 8, limit on occupancy. I think the occupancy limit depends on whether we've got category 1, 2, 3, or 4.
So the reason I put that in there is because, you know, I've been looking at a lot of laws from different towns, and some of them just have a cutoff. You can only have this many people in an STR. And I know of one in town that they, you know, regularly there are 12 people in this house, and it's really disruptive to the neighborhood. So
Right.
I was looking at, you know, different laws, and some of them, and I'll keep looking for more. I keep sending them. They just limit, you know, if you have an STR, there can only be, I don't care how many bedrooms you have. It can't be, you know, this is where you get into, I guess, trying to prevent the party house. Yeah.
So I think
That's what I'm putting next, I saw it in other places.
Yeah, so what I'm going to point down here, and here's what I've seen. So we're going to start out by saying 2 per bedroom, but max of, and I'll say for now 6, and I'm going to ask everybody's opinion first. Let me just write some stuff down there. And children, and people all have this in there. Children under XX do not count towards the max. So most laws do say children don't count, and they give an age: children under 6, children under 12, children under 2. So, I mean, our law says children under whatever doesn't count. I'd have to go look up our law. I think it might even be 12 or something. It's kind of an older number, but some laws have a younger number. So I think 2 per bedroom is a max. Is 6 the right number for the unit? And do we want to then say children under whatever don't count? What number is comfortable for the children, for how old, once the children reaches a certain age, they do count towards the number?
I think that's going to be very hard to enforce. I'm again, that is a question to me for Granicus or whatever type of agency we might use who might monitor listings and tell us, you know, how feasible it is to keep track of something like that. But I would just add also that
oh, you went on mute, Connor. Connor, your mute is showing.
Yeah, sorry about that. My screen started glitching out. We're getting like a crazy windstorm right now. This is the second Norte that's come through here. This would also, I think, you know, kind of also come down to a question about I'll circle back to it, but really I wouldn't know how to answer that, because it's hard to know how it could be. Oh, I know. How do we enforce it? Is it something Granicus has the capability, or again, another company has the capability of? And also, this is a question about the about the fees, because when we recommend a fee schedule, you know, how many bedrooms, you know, rented out, saying, and this is, I don't know, maybe you could consider it a philosophical question, but if there is an 8-bedroom house, really each additional bedroom in that house being available, is it equal to the 2 bedrooms that, you know, maybe one house has that get written out, or are they each worth an additional $50? Is the impact and the value being captured by that fee schedule? And I just do want to take this moment to point out that while I'm not saying I outright disagree with the increase in the fees that has seemed to have caught the ire of a few people on Facebook and whatnot, I am a little surprised, I'm hoping that whatever we come up with will be informed and independent of what the town board has already decided to do, and that the town board will remain open to changing that fee that they have changed all of a sudden, because that's really what we're trying. That's a big part of what we're trying to figure out here. And while I appreciate the increase to 400 as a base, I do wonder, how if it could be more carefully considered.
Yeah, well, I think we
Where
can.
do you come up with 6 as a maximum for the unit? I'm just curious. If somebody has a 5-bedroom house and they want to rent it to some grandparents and their children and their children's grandchildren, and it's a large enough space that's considered occupiable, so to speak.
Sir,
Why would you want to
please,
limit that number?
Sir, hello,
I'm
hi.
confused.
Before you finish your thought, can you please introduce yourself for the record? This is all on the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, my name is Jeff Harris. We have a place in Mount Tremper.
Understood. Hi, Jeff. So you're
Thank you.
asking where we came up with that?
Yeah, sort of the number of 6. I'm just not understand if the house is big enough to hold a certain amount of people based on the occupancy or number of bedrooms. Why would we limit it? I understand the party aspect of it, but that may be enforceable under a different provision.
I don't want to speak for anyone else in saying that these are not firm numbers we're working with in terms of we're not laying down legislation right now. I imagine that other towns are talking about that. To be honest, I don't know that I could agree with you on it's an arbitrary number. Oh, and I'm sorry, I just lost power. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
We
I
hear
can still hear you. Well,
Okay,
and in fact, I threw the number 6 here because it was something that was said. This is a brainstorming session. The zoning revision committee is going through. So before we leave this topic, I'll want to hear from everybody on the zoning revision committee and see what number the zoning revision committee thinks is the right number. Because this is, we're just brainstorming now. We're not down to writing law. We're trying to go through and say, hey, what are we thinking what are we thinking things should be? And then we're going to, will turn into law. So this is just the first time I wrote down 6, and I'm not even sure whether everybody on the zoning revision committee agrees. And this is again a zoning revision committee meeting, so we do want to have forward progress of the zoning revision committee. And I'm curious, Ed, whether you have an opinion on the 6.
Well, I think let's say there's 480 people renting now, and get an idea of what the size of these units are, how many bedrooms they have, and are they listed on the internet as to the number of bedrooms, and to get an idea of what we're dealing with. 6 might be too small if there are 50 or 60 or 70 houses being rented out with 10 bedrooms. But I think we should know that, and then we have to ask ourselves to respond to Jude's concern about the one house she knows about where 12 people come in and are very much a nuisance to the neighborhood, because we have to protect Woodstock's neighborhoods.
Yes.
We have to really protect the reason people move to this beautiful town. And so we need to pay attention to Jude's 12 people in a house as being overburdening to the neighborhood.
Well, I would just point out, again, I may be playing a little bit of devil's advocate here, but again, I would love to see us tackle the idea of what enforcements of, noise and just sort of the enforcement of whatever sort of conduct we want to see happening at these short-term rentals, looking at the density as a way to break up or even consider crowding or whatever, these things into or away from a certain area. So to answer the question from, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten his name. I'm sorry, but to answer his question, I would say, you know, I don't see, depending on the size of the house and the nature of the system we come up with, I'm less concerned about the max number of occupants than I am how we account for them in our fees, and whether or not Granicus or another entity that we would, I believe, need for enforcement of a internet dwelling platform such as the one we're talking about, the ability to actually, you know, determine and regulate how many occupants are in any place at a given time.
Yeah, I guess if I can weigh in as a member of the ZRC. So I feel like we're a little bit on a slippery slope. And Jude, I get it that you know the house that has 12 people and it's an issue. I guess the part I'm tripping up over is if somebody has an 8-bedroom house. I mean, it's a heck of a big house, but maybe somebody does have an 8-bedroom house. If somebody has an 8-bedroom house, then you're saying you can only have 6 people in it. Well, you know, 2 bedrooms are going to be empty, and the other 6 people probably aren't all going to be sleeping in their own room. So, and I don't know how many 8-bedroom houses we have around, but a 4-bedroom house is not unusual, and even a 5-bedroom house may not be unusual. So, I mean, if I were to put a max, I would throw a number of 8, perhaps more so than 6. But then we have to say children under a certain age, because most laws that I've looked at, including the Woodstock law, does set an age and say if your child is under this age, they don't count towards the maximum number. So I don't know. I think 6 may be a little too restrictive, but well, I don't know what people think.
You know, I threw that number out. It was never like this is what it should be. It was a point of discussion, and it was something that I saw in another law. And that's what I said. I think it, you know, I really think it would benefit us to look at a variety of laws in other places to see how they're addressing this. I mean, my feeling about this is that we are allowing commercial businesses in residential areas. And I feel like it is such an imposition on people who are just trying to live their lives in their homes. And so, you know, so any way that you can make that so that it kind of fits into the neighborhood and doesn't become, you know, all these cars, all this traffic, all these strangers, all these late night events, you know, to me, that preserves the community. And that's, you know, one of my main interests. And so that number was nothing I was particularly attached to. I saw it in a law somewhere. And so a lot of these things that I put in here, I saw in other laws. And I'm like, okay, do we want to look at this? Is this something we want to consider? None of this was written in stone. They were just points of discussion. And I do think we probably do want to put an upper limit. And yes, of course, children are in a different category. And what that age is, again, I would look at other laws to see what they do, because some 12-year-olds, you know, are fully adults.
Right. Sure.
So I don't know what the correct age is, but this was just a way to discuss, you know, how do we want our community to look? That's, you know, that's how I'm going at this. You know, I mean, we know that it has destroyed long-term rentals in the town. We know that they've all been swallowed up by STRs, but we also know that a lot of people are really upset about what it has done to their little neighborhood.
Sure. So, yeah, and that's why we just started all this to begin with, because of the neighborhood impact, and people screaming about their own. Yeah, totally.
So can we just add one thing? I'm sorry, this is Jeff again.
No, please don't. Please, we have a limited period of time that we're here, and we're not supposed to be.
And we actually have 3 more minutes, because we start at 6:30. I don't like to run this.
Okay, but everybody else is allowed to speak, so I just want to add one thing. The size of a property may make a difference.
Jeff, let me speak. I am the chair of this committee, and that is correct. The zoning revision committee members always get to speak, and everybody else is a guest. So you're a guest at the meeting, and that's why the zoning revision committees get to speak.
I apologize. I didn't realize I wasn't allowed to speak. Okay.
Well, we'll do public heard at the end, and when the meeting officially ends, I will stay on and listen to the public, and other people can if they want. But at the 1.5 hour mark, we do like to wrap up.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. I'll go on.
I would,
Thank you.
and I would like to add two things, but and try to move on from this. I am willing to stay later. I don't mind, being later on this meeting, but in terms of this, I'd like us to add to the notes where we erased enforcement as a question mark. I think we should, specifically coming back to this once we have a sense of who we will turn to for that enforcement, because the truth is that it will just be a sort of remedial, like, as we discover it being a problem that we can tackle, versus is this something that a company like Granicus offers in the packages they offer, that when a listing goes up, we get to see, how many that those listings account for how many people are in there. Because again, less interested in how many, if people have to wait a certain amount of time, or however this schedule of 1% is going to look for non-owner occupieds, because it's really what we're talking about for the most part, though again, this can and maybe should apply to everything else. The question is ultimately who can possibly account for it, and otherwise it's meaningless.
Yeah. Okay. So I am watching my clock, and it is 8 o'clock. I know, Connor, I heard you say you could stay on longer. Somebody else had said, well, it'd be a nice night to have a short meeting, which we didn't have because we went 1.5 hours. So I would like to move on to public comment.
Can I just say one?
Sorry, Jude, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say one thing in response to you, is that one of the things I was told was that the amount of the fines, which is why Kingston has some pretty, what is it, $1,000 for the first, $1,000 a day for the first offense, $2,500 for the second, and $5,000 for the third, is pretty much of a deterrent. And so that's one of the ways that a lot of towns are controlling it. They put a hefty fine on people who don't follow the rules, and it tends to, money tends to affect people. I am going to have to leave, but whoever is going to,
I gotta leave too.
I just want to let you know, I will come back and I will watch the YouTube video and listen to what everybody has to say.
Yeah.
I do just want to add one thing before you go, just while we have the board present, and that is I do think it's really high time this board gets serious about putting out some sort of forum for submission.
I'm gonna get with Melanie tomorrow. Yeah.
All right. Well, and while I appreciate that, Laura, again, please understand that I need to express my concern, given how long things like the scenic overlay thing has took.
Yes.
And again, that's not a dig at you personally. I'm just saying that we have a good opportunity here to get this type of input and to focus our lens at the time of conception. And it's so simple. I mean, I can do it. I'm willing to do it. I will share the password and the username with all of the board members and the town board, and we can, and no one will be able to delete anything. We can only take submissions, filter them out by what is, true and local and relevant, and then take them into consideration. And I do think it's something that there's no need to wait on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to talk to, I have an email into Melanie who left early today. So the two thoughts are, one, we could get an ID that people could send to, but that's not visible to everybody, just to whoever's managing the ID, or Facebook. So you would rather have it be a Facebook entry, that we have a Facebook entry and people tag onto the Facebook entry. Would that be correct?
The only thing I like personally about Facebook entries is that we could have a means by which people join. We're able to tell if they are local or not, if they live here, to at least to some extent. And then people can choose to submit publicly or choose to submit privately, not anonymously. I don't think we should take any anonymous feedback. But I think people should be given the opportunity to submit privately versus publicly.
Right. Right. So whoever is managing it can see it. Right.
Exactly. The idea is we put out a disclaimer saying that if you choose to message this account, to private message this account, your submission will be shared with the ZRC and the interest government body operating, but none of this information will be shared anywhere else.
Right. Good. Okay. Right. Okay. So so I do have an email into Melanie, and we'll see if we can make that happen. So okay. So we're moving on to and I'm looking, so we're doing public be heard. I'm staying on for public be heard. This is your chance to, and I know there are things in the chat, and I will be saving the chat before I close the meeting. But anyway, is there anything that anybody wants to say that's not in the chat? And a lot of folks are on mute, so you may have to unmute. Oh, yeah, go Heather. Go ahead, Heather. And I'm not hearing you yet. I see your mouth moving and you're not on mute, but I'm not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
I can, yay.
So I just want to say that I know you guys are working really hard on this, and I do appreciate all the deliberation. I think that, one thing to keep in mind is that there are like concerns, like I know Jude has brought up a lot of concerns around some party houses and things like that. And I don't think anybody thinks that should be part of the STR equation. And to me, when you give out permits for these houses, there are specific expectations of the way the guests should be behaving, of noise regulations and things like that. And in fact, by giving out these permits, you now can take them away from people who are violating that. And I think there's a lot of power in that. And I think that shouldn't be like under considered while you guys are working to craft this, is that like, because there shouldn't be houses that are over occupied and disturbing the neighbors. And if that's, a concern, then that should be something that can be penalized, and the permits can be taken away from those houses. You don't need to penalize somebody who owns a 4-bedroom house who maybe likes to let, Jeff's example, my house is a 4-bedroom house, and a lot of times grandparents come with the kids, and and the parents, and so there may be, I actually don't usually let more than 8 people stay in my house, but sometimes there'll be an infant or something. But I think a lot of times we can have a good list of behavioral expectations for running these houses, and then you have this power by taking away permits, and who's doing these houses, and then you can get rid of those people. So I think that some of that behavior doesn't necessarily have to be written into the regulations, as it should be maybe written into the expectations of permit holders. Like, you don't have to craft rules that eliminate those people. You can create rules that take the permits away from those people who don't obey.
And Heather, I am inclined to agree with you. And Laura, maybe rather than saying there is a cap on the number of people who can stay in a home, maybe it's more of a cap on the number of people who can occupy each bedroom. So the total number was determined.
And that's how the law is written right now. It's written as 2 people per bedroom. And I believe that it's under 12 people under the age of 12 don't count towards that occupancy. I think that's very fair. And I'll be honest, as a homeowner, I don't want more than that number of people in my house anyway. I have a septic system. I only have 2 bathrooms. So I think that's something that's good for everybody all around.
Just out of curiosity, Heather, how many bedrooms does your house have?
Mine has 4.
4. So 8 is a comfortable number because you got 4 bedrooms.
8 would be fine. I think 2. Yeah, I think 2 adults per bedroom is fine. And I think under 12 is, again, fine. I think that seems very fair to me. I think there may be, it would be hard to, it may be a slightly hard thing to police, although I do know that people who have their homes listed, I've heard of people who have their homes listed currently with more than 2 people per bedroom for occupancy, are getting that policed by the town. The town is calling them out on that. I mean, I don't do that because, like I said, I don't want more than 8 people staying in my house. But I think there's a lot of stuff, and I know that I do think that like engaging as we're working on this, as you guys are working on this law, you know, the reason I'm here at these meetings is so that I can help you guys understand how things actually run and how they actually work.
Thank you.
You know, I mean, I think one big thing to think about is that, you know, most of what Granicus is going to be able to police is going to be marketing. If people are listing their houses in other places. And I think that, or online places. And I think that, you know, well-crafted regulations should protect the kind of quality of life stuff that we're talking about so that then the town can enforce them and again, take the permits away from the houses that are being disobedient. But it's going to be hard if you like, say you're going to have a schedule with like 3 years for a permit and that your permit goes away and then you have to wait, you have to go back on the bottom of the list. I'm really very much against that. I think taking something away from people is going to open the town up to a lot of trouble that they may not want to deal with. But I also think that it misses how this actual business and how actually renting an STR works. Because like right now, I am booking for this summer. And so even if my permit expired, say my permit expired at the end of April, it doesn't. But if it did, would I not be allowed to be booking for the summer? Probably not. But how would you know? And how do you enforce that? I think that's part of like, I think thoughtfully crafted legislation has to take into consideration how this kind of actual thing operates, because then you can have people operating above board and you can hold them accountable and police them in a way that if you make people kind of disappear, that makes it harder to regulate and harder to take, you know, deal with the problematic people. So thank you for listening, Calvin.
I do think that part of the reason we began discussing the amortizing as we did, I'm going to call it sunsetting because that is just a little bit.
That's the right word. Amortizing is right.
I don't think I don't have power right now, so I'm really just doing this on. I can look up the deck.
You're in the dark.
Yeah, even if I turned on my camera, you would not be able to see me.
Oh, that's okay. We can hear you. That's good.
But the idea would be so that the point would be to not leave anyone in a lurch. And I don't know, I'm sure you were here when I said this before, but I just want everyone to know that like, no matter what you hear from anyone secondhand, no one is looking to punish anyone. We're trying to strike the balance of creating even more opportunity so that these things just don't, so it doesn't just disappear. We're going to we're trying to strike that good balance and no one will be, have the rug completely pulled out from under them so that you are in a situation like the one you just described.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to keep in mind, Connor, is like a lot of people like me who own these homes. There are people that are corporations. I think we should get rid of those people. But a lot of the homeowners, like there's a natural cycle and a natural variation in how much you want to rent your house, how often you want to go. When my kids were like 2 and 4, we used to come up every single weekend with them. And now my kids are 14 and 16. And I don't know if you remember being a teenager, but you don't want to go anywhere with your parents. And you know, I don't really want to leave them at home alone either. So, you know, and my husband and I know that we want to go spend longer periods of time in Woodstock. So I also think there's a natural cycle of this where, you know, if you're not running it as a business, you may have some times when you want 30 days a year and sometimes when you're going to rent it more. And, you know, there's a lot of fluctuation. And I think we really can craft something that will, you know, preserve the community, focus on quality of life issues without unnecessarily like being punitive to people who are homeowners who have a second home in the community.
Yeah, I'm just making some notes here. Yeah, because all good points. Okay. Does anybody else want to say anything?
Yeah, I just one other quick thing. I think the area of the house or the location of the house, if somebody has a 5-bedroom house on a 10-acre location, and it is a lot different than a 5-bedroom in the middle of town. And I don't know if there's any consideration being made in terms of density and impact on neighbors and things like that, but I would hope that that would be considered as well in terms of number of people that would occupy a house and things of that nature. But I think the area and the size of the property might factor into whether or not that's a nuisance or considered to be a potential nuisance to neighbors and other areas of the town.
Well,
So-
what I will tell you, and some of the early feedback we got from, and when we first started having an STR law, which was what, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Anyway, is you may think a 5-acre house on a 10-acre lot is secluded, but sound carries a lot more than you think. So, so actually the, yeah, and anyway, your big house or whatever on your big lot, the sound still carries, and sometimes the people that are renting from you don't realize that their sound is carrying because all they see are trees. But anyway, sound does
No, I
carry.
understand, but to Heather's point, at that point, maybe you enforce the law and take a permit away versus restricting it prior to, kind of thinking in front of it that it is going to be a problem versus when it is a problem. So that's all I would ask.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have things they want to say? Oh, there's Lisa. Hi, Lisa.
Hi. I've thought of a lot of things, but what I just want to build on that about the density. There are density maps, because I remember when we got our SGR permit, we had to go to another board. Can't even remember. They have density maps, and I do think it's important. I have a 2-bedroom house, and my neighbors love it when there are guests there. They feel safer. I have like single women on both sides. They feel safer. They love seeing a family with young kids there. They're thrilled. So, where I live, it's not a problem on Yerry Hill Road. So this density thing, I think, is really important to get clear on. And I also just want to say I'm appreciating the effort here. And the members of the ZRC cannot be expert in all the different things that come to you to figure out. There's a lot of different things. So we really are here, like as Heather was sharing and I'm sharing, we really are here, like reach out to us in between meetings.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
We know what it's like on the ground.
Right.
And we're happy to help.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else have something that they want to say? Sarah, are you waving your hand? Go ahead, Sarah. Hi. You're on mute, however.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I think she's trying to figure it out. Oh, there she
Okay,
goes.
sorry.
Yay!
This phone, yeah, sorry.
Yay.
Technology, which is actually what I was going to mention. Actually, thank you for a good meeting. It was actually nice to hear a lot of back and forth discussion. And yeah, like good debate tonight. Some different ideas I think I heard tonight. So that was nice. But while I'm struggling with technology, like I always bring up, I'm just going to say it one more time. So I understand we are going to have Zoom again soon, but it's not as a town, but it's not soon enough. And now our new thing is we're waiting for a podium because we had to wait for approval. Yeah, we're waiting for a podium. This was the conversation on my way to our Capitol building today to talk about media transparency in the outflow room of the Senate, because there are 2 bills that are active right now that they're revisiting, and it's regarding media. Part of it is media access and transparency. So it's New York State Assembly 5900 and Senate 2581. So, at this point, I just feel like we're so far behind. So the fact that you guys can do this is great, but with Chris Bailey not being able to get in, with Linda Lover not being able to get in, with my going out and then not being able to get in with some new link I was sent, it's it's really tough, and certain committees don't do Zoom at all. So we're 4 years past the pandemic situation where everything was Zoom. We've really got to get on board, and there was no agenda posted for tonight. So like, just to have something a little more cohesive, please. Because, and if we could please post this meeting as soon as possible, because we've had 4 meetings since January 24th, and we've had no YouTube links on our website
they're not on,
since.
these are not on YouTube? Are you talking about?
No, not your meetings particularly, not for the ZRC particularly, in general. So I'm hoping that this particular meeting, this particular meeting could please be posted
And
on the website.
I would, and I appreciate what you're saying. And while I do agree with you, I would like to see more media transparency. I do, and I please take this the wrong way, but like, we're not the people to talk to about it. I mean, we are a board of volunteers. The town board, you know, is the one to solicit, you know, the town. And I'm glad to hear that you were up at our state house doing it. But you know, the truth is that, you know, I think this board is unfortunately uniquely adept and perhaps uniquely interested in getting all and being as transparent as possible, having our information put out there for the public to see and attend. And while, you know, that nobody and nothing is perfect, it could always be better, but we don't want to make the perfect the enemy of the good. So I commend you and totally encourage you to continue pursuing this. But please, I would say take this to the town board, because you are not the only person who has approached me or us to talk about how, you know, that, like, in a good way, we want more people to be involved. We want more people than they can fit in those town offices. But I would ask you, do you have a question for us that we can?
Will this be posted expeditiously?
Yeah, that's up to
on
Melanie.
our town site.
Yeah, and I did see Linda's comment, and I am a town board member. So when Sarah addresses this to the town board, I am a town board member. So I will get with Melanie, and I've asked her before, and I haven't checked that every meeting we do is posted, but she tells me that she gets them all posted. So I'll go verify that all of our meetings are posted on YouTube. But she said she gets them all posted.
Sorry, didn't mean to shout like that.
That's okay. And then the other thing too is I'll also have to let her know that there were some Zoom issues. That it sounds like, in feedback from Linda, was that when she got the link for this meeting earlier in the day, and it didn't really work, and then she went back again and there was a different link. That seems odd to me. And there were 3 links in the calendar entry for today. I don't know. Is it possible Linda could have grabbed the one? Things happen. So I don't know. I'll have to ask Melanie whether, because she's got our stuff on the calendar. I mean, I told her we're meeting from now until December 9th, the second and the 4th Monday. So I don't know whether she has us up every time, and I don't know whether she has to update the Zoom link, and maybe she just does it during the Monday. I don't know what her habit is, but
yeah, no, this is different. I went in through the calendar link, and then I got a new link in the middle of this meeting, which I tried to use, didn't work. So I went back through the calendar link. That calendar doesn't get updated during the meeting. It's a problem. It's just a problem.
Yeah.
So, we need a tech person. That's all. So, but that's separate. Well, that's offline. That has nothing to do with your
topic.
You cohesively as a group, or anything to do with zoning, zoning reform.
Yeah.
But it's just an ask for transparency, Connor. That's, I'm not interrupting your zoning. Just, again, and I say in every meeting and to every committee, so I'm saying it to yours too, that I'm just asking for more transparency, less technological problems in general. So, like, the answer that I'm getting here tonight is not the answer, is what I'm saying.
Well, fair enough. I can say that while we may not be the vessel for that, it doesn't stop me from agreeing with you. I would also like to see that.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah, we can work together on it, yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And that's it. All
Okay.
right, and thanks for the meeting.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything that they want to say? And I'll be pulling the chat comments before we go. Anything else from anybody who joined? Well, I appreciate everybody coming. I appreciate everybody, you know, and speaking of transparency, these are open meetings, and people are very interested in the STR topic. I have yet to post an agenda on a town website, because usually it's the ZRC meeting. The ZRC members are usually the attendees and they know what we're going to talk about. And you all are here, and I can tell you, we'll be talking about STRs again next time. So if you join us on February 26th, I can tell you the key agenda item will be STRs. Today we had a couple of loose ends to cover, which we did before we started talking about STRs, but STR will definitely be the topic in 2 weeks. So with that, I'm going to go pull the chat so that I can share that with the zoning revision committee. And thank you. Oh, yeah, here's Linda. The agenda can be posted with the Zoom link. So I'll have to talk to Melanie, Linda, and find out how to do that, and how soon I have to get it to her, because she, yeah, I mean, she ends her day, and like your previous note said, she does have a personal thing going on at home. So she's been ending her days early while she deals with what she's dealing with. So we'll see how that goes. So I know in the perfect world I'd always do it, and in the real world we'll see if I can make that happen. But I do hear you that it'd be wonderful. So
It's day before for town board. That I know for a fact. I speak with her all the time.
yeah. Oh, cool. Thank you. Thank you. All righty. So I'm going to capture the comments, and we're good. And thank you, everybody. And there we go.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Laura. You guys everyone have a good night.
Hey, have fun
Thanks,
where
you
you
too.
are, Connor. So you'll have to tell us all about your travel when you get back.
Oh, I'm suffering terribly.
Serious?
No, my tear, yeah, shedding tears, and they evaporate before they hit the ground.
It's warm. It's warm where you are. We're gonna get snow.
Yes. Well, I enjoy that.
Yeah. Well, I'll think of you as I shovel tomorrow, or maybe maybe Wednesday. I'll be shoveling because it's coming down tomorrow. So
Yeah. Everyone really be careful.
yeah. Okay. Thank you. We'll see you all soon.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.